I was too ugly, so my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. But after my glow up, he begged to come back. This is how my story begins. From the very first days of my childhood, I never felt like I belonged in the world of pretty girls. I would look in the mirror and see flaws everywhere. My hair was never shiny and smooth. My skin was not like the glowing faces on magazines. And my body never matched the slim and perfect shapes people praised. I grew up hearing whispers, the kind of whispers that dig into your soul. Classmates, giggling behind my back, people making jokes about how I looked, even relatives reminding me that I was not the beautiful one in the family. Every comment cut deep into my heart, and I started to believe that maybe they were right. Maybe I really was ugly. When I met him, everything felt different, at least for a while. He was charming, the kind of boy that made every girl turn her head, and somehow he chose me. At first, I could not believe it. I kept asking myself why someone like him would want someone like me. He said all the right words. He told me I was enough, that beauty was not everything, that he liked me for who I was. And I believed him because I wanted to believe that love could exist for someone like me. I trusted him with every part of my heart. But insecurities have a way of creeping into every corner of a relationship. Whenever he looked at other girls, my heart sank. Whenever he spent too much time on his phone, I worried he was talking to someone prettier, someone better. He told me I was being paranoid, that I had nothing to worry about. So I pushed those feelings aside and held on tighter. Because he was all I had. He was the only one who ever made me feel wanted. My best friend was always around too. She was everything I was not. Beautiful, confident, full of life. She walked into any room, and people noticed her instantly. Where I was shy and insecure, she was bold and fearless. I used to admire her, sometimes even envy her. But I trusted her with my secrets and with my heart. She knew everything about me, including how deeply I loved my boyfriend. I never imagined she would betray me. Still, little things started to change. I noticed the way he laughed harder at her jokes than at mine. I noticed how his eyes stayed on her a little too long. And whenever the three of us were together, I felt invisible. I tried to ignore it. I tried to convince myself that I was imagining things, that I was overthinking, that they were just friends. After all, she was my best friend, and he was my boyfriend, and they both told me they cared about me. But the uneasiness kept growing inside me. Then came the night everything shattered. I remember it clearly, like a wound that never fully heals. I had planned a small surprise for him, just something simple to show him I cared. I wanted to bring food over to his place and spend the evening together. But when I arrived, the door was unlocked. I stepped inside quietly, expecting to surprise him. Instead, I was the one who got surprised. What I saw broke me into pieces. There they were, together, my boyfriend and my best friend, holding each other in a way that left no room for denial. The two people I trusted the most, the two people who were supposed to love me, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. My heart stopped. My body froze. And my world collapsed. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Tears burned my eyes as I turned and ran away. That night I cried harder than I ever thought was possible. I felt worthless, unwanted, abandoned. I kept hearing his voice in my head, telling me I was enough, telling me he loved me. But it was all lies. I kept seeing her face, the friend who smiled at me and said she would always be by my side. But she had stabbed me in the back. I could not understand how they could do this to me, how love could turn so cruel. The pain was unbearable. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. I stopped living. I felt like I had lost everything. Not only did I lose the man I loved, but I also lost my best friend. The two people who meant the most to me had destroyed me completely. After that night, my life became a haze of sadness and confusion. I could barely look at myself in the mirror, every reflection reminding me of what I had lost. I kept asking myself why it had to happen, why the people I trusted most could hurt me so deeply. I replayed the images over and over, the way he looked at her, the way she smiled back, the way they held each other like I had never existed. Each memory was a dagger twisting in my chest, and the pain seemed endless. Friends and family tried to comfort me, but nothing seemed to reach the depth of my despair. I would sit alone in my room for hours, staring at the walls, thinking about everything I had done for him, everything I had shared with my best friend, and how all of it had been thrown away. I could feel the emptiness growing inside me, and, for the first time in my life, I doubted if anyone could ever truly love me, if anyone could ever see past my flaws. I became quiet, withdrawn. The world felt like it had betrayed me as much as they had. I stopped answering calls, stopped replying to messages, stopped engaging with people around me. I felt invisible, like a ghost in my own life. I would scroll through social media and see him posting pictures with her, smiling, laughing like nothing had happened. It made me feel sick to my stomach. The person I gave my heart to had chosen someone else, and the friend I trusted most had helped him do it. I wanted to disappear. Yet amidst all this pain, a small voice inside me whispered that I could not stay broken forever. I realized that while they had taken my trust, my innocence, and my love, they could not take my life. I had to find a way to survive, to keep living, even if it meant facing each day with tears in my eyes. Slowly, I began to force myself to move, even if it was just a small step, even if it was just putting on clean clothes or walking outside for a few minutes. I spent nights thinking about what I could have done differently, about whether I could have seen the signs, about whether I could have prevented it. But then I understood that it was not my fault. Their betrayal was theirs alone. I could not control their hearts, their choices, or their desires. I could only control myself, and the way I chose to respond to this tragedy would define the next chapter of my life. The loneliness and sorrow were heavy, but they also planted the seed of determination. I began to imagine a life where I would not depend on anyone else's approval, a life where I would be strong enough to face the world on my own terms. I realized that if I could rise from this heartbreak, if I could transform myself from the girl they rejected into someone they would envy, then the betrayal would not have the power to destroy me. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. I learned to cry in private, to vent my anger in silence, and to rebuild a sense of self-worth piece by piece. Every tear, every moment of despair became a reminder that I was still alive, that I still had the power to change my story. I began journaling my thoughts, pouring my heart onto paper, acknowledging every pain, every hurt, every betrayal. It was exhausting, but slowly it helped me understand myself, my resilience, and the fire growing within me. As the days passed, the pain of betrayal did not fade, but something inside me began to change. I could no longer allow myself to be defined by their actions, by their cruelty, by the way they had made me feel small and worthless. I realized that being hurt did not mean I had to stay hurt. I started looking at myself differently, not through their judgment, not through the labels of ugly or unworthy, but through the lens of my own potential. I remembered the girl I used to be, the one who would hide behind baggy clothes, avoid mirrors, avoid social events. I wanted to meet her again, not as the shy, insecure version, but as someone who would take control of her life. The first small steps were painful. Every glance in the mirror reminded me of their betrayal. Every memory of their laughter and their lies made my chest ache. But each tear shed became a spark that ignited the fire of determination. I began thinking about the future I deserved, about a life where I could be proud of myself, a life where no one could break me so easily, I imagined walking into a room and commanding attention not because of their approval, but because of my own confidence. I imagined the smile on their faces when they realized what they had lost, and I allowed myself to feel the power of that imagined victory, not for revenge alone, but for my own sense of worth, for the girl I knew I could become. Even in those moments of quiet reflection, I felt the weight of loneliness. I longed for comfort, for someone to tell me that it would all be okay, but I understood that I could not rely on anyone else. My healing had to come from within. I learned to sit with my feelings without being overwhelmed by them. I allowed myself to grieve, to mourn the love I lost, to acknowledge the betrayal I endured. And slowly, the grief transformed into determination. I promised myself that I would not waste another moment feeling small, invisible, or inadequate. I would take every ounce of pain, every moment of rejection, and turn it into a reason to rise. The betrayal had marked the end of one chapter, but it also silently wrote the beginning of another. A chapter where I would grow stronger, where I would shine brighter, where I would reclaim the life that was stolen from me. And so, as the nights grew long and the days heavy, I found a small, quiet strength that had been there all along. The girl who once cried herself to sleep, imagining a life without him, was beginning to wake up. She did not yet know the heights she would reach, the beauty she would embrace, or the power she would wield. But she knew this. She would no longer be broken. The betrayal had shattered me, but it had also planted the seed for everything that was to come. I had survived the darkest night of my life, and now, with a heart full of pain yet burning with determination, I prepared to rise. I knew the journey ahead would not be easy. Every step forward would be met with doubt, with fear, with the memories of the people who had hurt me. But I had made a silent promise to myself that I would not remain broken, that I would transform my pain into power, and that one day I would look back and see how far I had come. The first days were the hardest. I woke up each morning with an ache in my chest, memories of his betrayal lingering like shadows over my mind. I could feel the weight of rejection pressing down, the whispers of my own insecurities telling me I was not enough, but I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me fall. I started small, making tiny changes in my daily life. I began waking up earlier, forcing myself to eat properly, to go outside and breathe fresh air, even when all I wanted was to hide under my blanket and disappear. Every small effort felt monumental, every step forward a battle against the doubts that had haunted me for so long. I realized that to rise, I needed more than physical change. I needed to strengthen my mind and my soul. I started reading books about self-improvement, about resilience, about people who had turned their lives around after tragedy. I filled my mind with knowledge, with ideas, with inspiration. I wrote in journals, pouring every emotion onto paper, allowing myself to feel every tear, every heartbreak, every pang of sorrow. Each word I wrote became a brick in the foundation of the person I was slowly becoming. There were days when I wanted to quit, when the memories of him and my former best friend would crash over me in waves of anger and grief. I would remember the way he smiled at her, the way she leaned into him, and I would feel the cold sting of betrayal all over again. But I forced myself to channel that pain into action. I reminded myself that they had no control over my future, that my life was mine to shape, and that the best way to rise above them was to focus entirely on myself. I joined a gym, not just to change my body, but to feel strong, to feel capable, to reclaim control over myself. Every morning, I pushed through exhaustion, every drop of sweat, a symbol of my determination. I learned to cook healthy meals, to care for my body with respect and love, to embrace discipline as a tool for transformation. I discovered a strength I had never known existed, a power in consistency and perseverance, in refusing to give up even when everything inside me screamed that it was hopeless. Alongside physical change, I worked tirelessly on my career. I had always been intelligent, but I realized that success would give me independence, confidence, and a sense of achievement that no betrayal could take away. I spent long hours learning, researching, improving my skills, networking with people who inspired me. Every small victory, every completed project, every word of praise I received became fuel for the fire that was growing inside me. I could feel myself evolving, becoming someone they would one day recognize, someone they could not ignore, someone they would regret hurting. The transformation was not immediate. It took months of relentless effort, nights filled with tears and doubts, mornings when my body ached and my spirit felt weak. But I kept reminding myself why I was doing this. I kept holding on to the vision of the life I wanted, the person I wanted to become. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, I began to notice changes. My body became toned and strong. My face glowed with health and vitality. My confidence began to shine through every interaction. I started dressing differently, choosing outfits that reflected the woman I was becoming, experimenting with hairstyles and makeup, embracing beauty as an expression of my inner strength. But the most profound change was within me. The girl who once relied on the approval of others, who measured her worth by the attention she received, was being replaced by a woman who valued herself for who she was. I no longer sought validation from the people who had hurt me. I no longer allowed their opinions to define my self-worth. I had learned to stand tall, to speak with conviction, to look people in the eye and know my own value. As I grew stronger and more confident, I also learned to embrace the small joys of life. I took up hobbies I had abandoned. I reconnected with people who genuinely cared for me. I traveled to places I had only dreamed of. Each experience, each accomplishment, each moment of happiness was a reminder that my life was mine, that I had the power to shape my destiny, and that no betrayal could take that away. During this time, I also focused on financial independence. I knew that being wealthy would give me the freedom to live on my own terms, to make choices without fear, to never feel powerless again. I worked tirelessly, taking on new projects, investing in myself and my skills, saving every bit of money I could. Every dollar earned, every opportunity seized, was a step further away from the girl who had been left broken and alone. I began to see a future where I was unstoppable, a future where I would not just survive, but thrive. Through all the struggle, there were moments of doubt. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, questioning if all the effort would ever pay off, if I would ever truly rise above the pain. But I refused to give in to despair. I reminded myself that resilience was forged through adversity, that strength was born from struggle, and that my journey was not about them. It was about me. Every challenge, every setback, every moment of weakness became a stepping stone toward the woman I was destined to become. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, the girl who had been broken, rejected, and betrayed began to transform into someone radiant, someone confident, someone who carried herself with grace and power. Her smile, once timid and uncertain, now commanded attention. Her presence, once quiet and overlooked, now drew admiration. Her mind, once clouded by doubts and insecurities, now shone with clarity and purpose. She had risen from the ashes of heartbreak, not through vengeance, not through bitterness, but through relentless determination, self-love, and unwavering resilience. As the seasons changed, so did my life. I found joy in my accomplishments, pride in my growth, and a quiet satisfaction in knowing that the pain I endured had not defeated me. I had built a foundation so strong that no betrayal could ever shake it again. And deep inside, I knew that one day, when they saw me, they would recognize not just the beauty and success, but the power, the resilience, and the spirit of a woman who had refused to be broken. After months of relentless effort, the changes within me were undeniable. The girl who had been shattered and heartbroken had transformed into someone almost unrecognizable. Her face glowed with health, her body carried strength and elegance, and her every movement radiated confidence. People who had once ignored me now looked twice, and I could feel the power of presence that I had never known before. But this transformation was not just physical, it was deeper. It was the awakening of a spirit that refused to be small or overlooked. Every scar, every tear, every sleepless night had been woven into the tapestry of my strength. The first time, I truly recognized the woman I had become. I was standing in front of a mirror, alone in my apartment, and I realized that I no longer saw the girl who had cried herself to sleep over heartbreak. In her place stood someone radiant, poised, unshakable. Her posture spoke of self-assurance, her gaze was steady, and her presence seemed to command the room even when it was empty. I touched my face, my skin soft and glowing, and traced the curve of my jawline, the arch of my brows, and the sparkle in my eyes, and I smiled with a mix of pride and disbelief. I had fought through despair, through sleepless nights and lonely mornings, and I had emerged victorious, and the thought made my heart swell with quiet triumph. I began to take my life in hand with renewed ambition. I threw myself into my career, my passions, my goals. Every morning I woke before dawn, preparing meticulously for the day ahead. I immersed myself in work that challenged my intellect, taking on projects that demanded creativity, strategic thinking, and perseverance. I reached out to people who inspired me, building connections with mentors and industry leaders who could help me grow. Every conversation, every decision, every calculated risk brought me closer to the life I had always imagined. I had learned that beauty and confidence were amplified by accomplishment and independence, and I pursued both with relentless determination. Shopping trips, new wardrobes, hair transformations, skincare routines, everything became part of my daily ritual. Not out of vanity, but as an assertion of self-love and self-respect. I experimented with fashion in ways I had never dared before, trying bold colors, daring cuts, and elegant styles that reflected the woman I had become. Every outfit I wore, every style I tried was a statement. I was no longer the girl who hid away. I was the woman who demanded attention simply by existing. And the best part was, I was doing it for myself, not for them. My evenings were often spent in quiet reflection or planning. I would sit in my elegantly decorated apartment, sipping tea or wine, thinking about my journey, about the pain that had once defined me, and about the person I was now becoming. Each memory of betrayal no longer brought tears. It brought resolve. Each recollection of his smirk, each whisper of her laughter became fuel for my ambition. I had transformed my pain into power, and it gave me a clarity I had never known. Yet while I was enjoying my newfound freedom and beauty, a quiet plan for revenge simmered in the back of my mind. I did not want to be bitter or cruel. I wanted to show them what they had lost, to make them understand the magnitude of what they threw away. It was not just about their regret, it was about my triumph, my reclamation of power, my ability to rise above betrayal and shine even brighter. I began envisioning scenarios in my mind where they would catch glimpses of my success, my confidence, my beauty, and I allowed myself to feel the quiet satisfaction of knowing that their choices had created a woman they could never hold on to. Attended events, dinners, and social gatherings with elegance and poise. Eyes turned toward me, whispers of admiration floated around, and I could sense that he and my former best friend were noticing, even if they did not dare to approach me. Their disbelief, the recognition of my transformation, fueled my confidence. I walked into rooms with a smile, with grace, with a presence that could not be ignored. Every glance they gave me, every whisper of their astonishment, was a quiet reminder that I had become the woman they could never hold on to. Financial independence became another instrument of my empowerment. I invested wisely, built successful ventures, and saw my wealth grow steadily. Money gave me freedom, but it also gave me leverage, the ability to live on my own terms, and the assurance that I would never again feel powerless. The girl who had cried herself to sleep over betrayal now dined in the finest places, traveled to cities she had only dreamed of, and surrounded herself with people who uplifted and respected her. I had created a life that was not just successful, but fulfilling, luxurious, and filled with experiences that enriched my soul. The transformation was not just external. My mind had sharpened, my emotions had stabilized, and my heart had learned to recognize genuine love and care. I began to meet people who valued me for my essence, not just my appearance. I learned to engage with confidence, to express myself without hesitation, and to speak in ways that commanded respect. Every success, every compliment, every recognition reinforced the reality that I had transcended the girl who had once been deemed ugly, invisible, or unworthy. And then the subtle revenge began. I did not confront them directly at first. I did not announce my success or flaunt my transformation. I let it speak for itself. He would see me in social gatherings, perfectly poised, elegant, radiant. My former best friend would watch me shine, and the truth of their betrayal would weigh heavier with every glance they cast my way. I could sense their discomfort, their disbelief, their envy, and it was a quiet, satisfying victory. I allowed them to witness my rise without interference, without malice, only with quiet confidence. I attended parties where they were present, laughing and engaging with people who admired me, showing them indirectly that their choices had consequences, that I had moved beyond their betrayal, and that I was thriving without them. Every time he caught my eye, I smiled, not out of forgiveness, but out of acknowledgement that I had survived, had transformed, and had grown stronger than he could ever have imagined. My social presence became a testament to my resilience. Pictures, interactions, and mutual acquaintances all highlighted my beauty, confidence, and accomplishments. The whispers of astonishment reached them, and I could feel their awareness growing, a silent recognition that the girl they had abandoned had become someone extraordinary. The same friend who had smiled at my heartbreak, who had plotted betrayal alongside him, now had to confront the reality of what she had lost. Yet the sweetest part of my transformation was internal. I had learned to love myself genuinely, to appreciate my growth, to celebrate every victory, no matter how small. Every compliment, every recognition, every smile I received was a reflection of my perseverance and strength. I had become someone who was not only beautiful on the outside, but radiant with self-assurance, intelligence, and grace. I had risen above pain, not by seeking revenge and anger, but by cultivating a life that would leave them wishing they had valued me. As weeks turned into months, I saw the tangible effects of my journey: invitations to events, professional recognition, admiration from peers, and the growing sense of personal pride became daily affirmations of my worth. He reached out occasionally, unable to resist the pull of curiosity, but I remained distant, unshaken and composed. She attempted to reconnect, offering excuses and apologies, but I knew that my peace was not something to be bargained for. I had risen far beyond the reach of their manipulations, and I embraced every moment of my flourishing life with pride and quiet triumph. Every step I took, every achievement I celebrated, every glance I offered to the world was a reminder that the girl they once underestimated was now a force to be reckoned with. The combination of beauty, confidence, intelligence, and financial independence created an aura that could not be ignored. I had turned heartbreak into power, betrayal into motivation, and despair into determination. And as I stood in front of mirrors, Reflecting on the journey from the girl who once hid in shadows to the woman who now commanded attention effortlessly, I realized that this transformation was more than revenge. It was liberation. It was self-respect. It was the fulfillment of the promise I had made to myself in the darkest hours. The world now saw me as radiant, successful, and untouchable. And in that, I found satisfaction beyond any fleeting desire for vengeance. The man who had once held my heart, and the friend who had aided in my betrayal, could now witness, if only from afar, the extraordinary woman I had become. Their disbelief, their silent envy, and the unmistakable recognition of their mistake became the culmination of my quiet, steady, unstoppable revenge. I did not need confrontation. I did not need explanations. I only needed my life to speak for me, and it had spoken in ways that no words could match. Every glance they stole, every whisper of astonishment, every moment of hesitation on their part fed the quiet satisfaction I felt. I walked taller, spoke clearer, and smiled brighter than ever before. My beauty was no longer a tool for their attention, but a reflection of the woman I had fought to become. My success and independence became a silent language they could not interpret fully, a constant reminder that the girl they had dismissed was gone forever, replaced by someone unbreakable, someone untouchable, someone radiant. I reveled in my autonomy. I traveled to cities that had once been mere dreams, stayed in hotels that exuded elegance, dined in restaurants that whispered sophistication, and built a network of friends who cherished me for my intellect, ambition, and presence. Each step in this glamorous, purposeful life was a deliberate assertion of my triumph, a testament to the power of resilience, and a subtle, yet undeniable message to those who had doubted me. The more my life blossomed, the more inevitable it became that they would notice. I could feel it in the air, the subtle shift when I entered a room, the stolen glances from those who had once held power over my heart, and the whispers that floated in the background, heavy with disbelief and regret. He, the man who had once claimed to love me, now found himself confronted with a reality he had never imagined. The woman he had discarded with a laugh and a careless betrayal was no longer the fragile girl he thought he had controlled. She was radiant, confident, unstoppable, and thriving in a life he could never touch. It started subtly at first. A message here, a call there, casual inquiries about mutual friends, nothing too revealing, nothing that could betray the depth of his curiosity or his growing desperation. But soon, the tone changed. His messages became longer, filled with hesitation, apologies, pleas, and confessions. He admitted mistakes he had never acknowledged before, tried to explain the choices he had made, and even hinted at the longing he still felt. Each word he sent, each call he attempted, was a reminder that he had lost something priceless, and that realization brought me a quiet, almost serene satisfaction. Yet I was no longer the same girl who had cried over his betrayal. I no longer needed validation from someone who had chosen to hurt me. I had built a life so fulfilling, so rich in joy, purpose, and love for myself, that his words could no longer sway me. I read his messages, felt the sting of old wounds briefly, but then smiled, knowing that I now held the power he had once taken for granted. My response was measured, calm, polite but distant. I let him feel the absence, the space I had created, and the realization that the woman he had abandoned was unreachable, not because of distance, but because of her strength and her self-respect. Then, there was her, my former best friend, the one who had smiled at my heartbreak, who had taken my laughter and twisted it into her own gain. She reached out too, her messages soaked in remorse, filled with apologies that felt fragile and desperate. She admitted her betrayal, confessed the guilt she had carried, and begged for forgiveness. But I had learned a profound lesson from my journey. Forgiveness is not a currency to be spent at will. It is a gift earned, and not everyone deserves to receive it. I read her words with calm composure, acknowledging her regret silently, but I did not give her the closure she sought. Instead, I let my silence speak volumes, allowing her to face the consequences of her choices without interference from me. As their attempts to re-enter my life grew more urgent, I realized that this was the final test of my transformation, the ultimate confirmation of my rise. They both had a chance to see the woman I had become, to understand that the girl they had discarded was gone forever, replaced by someone untouchable, radiant, and fully alive. And I savored this moment with quiet grace, walking through it with elegance, poise, and unwavering confidence. I did not need to confront them directly. I only needed to exist fully in my truth, and that truth was more powerful than any words or apologies they could offer. My life had expanded into new dimensions I had never imagined. I traveled to distant cities, stayed in places that whispered luxury and refinement, met people who valued me for my intellect and spirit, and explored opportunities that challenged me and fulfilled my ambitions. Each day was a testament to my strength, a celebration of my growth, and a demonstration of the life I had claimed for myself. In this life, there was no space for bitterness, only for the joy of independence, the pride in my accomplishments, and the beauty of self-love. And then, unexpectedly, love arrived. Not the desperate, fragile love I had once known, but a steady, nurturing, and genuine connection with someone who valued me entirely. He saw me not just as beautiful, but as a partner, an equal, a woman whose heart and mind deserved respect, care, and devotion. With him, I found laughter, comfort, shared dreams, and deep, unwavering support. It was the kind of love that had eluded me in my past, the kind of love that made the betrayals I had endured feel like distant shadows, unable to touch the bright present I had built. The man who had once claimed my heart eventually reached a point of desperation. He called incessantly, his voice trembling with emotion, his apologies now urgent and frantic. He admitted the depth of his regret, begged for another chance, and confessed the longing he could no longer contain. But I had learned a fundamental truth. The power of choice is the greatest gift one can wield. I listened to him, felt the echoes of old pain, and then gently, firmly, let him know that the opportunity he sought had passed. My heart belonged to someone who had never abandoned me, someone who had chosen to love me fully and unconditionally, and I would never return to the past. Her, too, stood before me one day, her eyes heavy with guilt, words faltering, and the weight of her betrayal pressing on her chest. She asked for forgiveness, her voice trembling, her apology sincere yet too late. I looked at her, saw the girl she had been, the choices she had made, and the pain she had caused. And in that moment, I felt neither malice nor bitterness. I simply acknowledged her, offered a nod of understanding, and walked away, leaving her to grapple with her own choices, while I embraced the life I had built. My forgiveness was quiet, internal, a reflection of my strength, not a gift to be earned or taken lightly. Walking away from them, I felt a sense of liberation, unlike anything I had ever known. The betrayals, the tears, the heartbreak, they were all behind me, transformed into lessons, strength, and resilience. I stepped fully into a life of beauty, love, and purpose, surrounded by people who valued me, supported me, and inspired me. Each day brought new joys, new experiences, and new triumphs, and I embraced them with gratitude, grace, and confidence. I reveled in the love I had found, a love rooted not in desperation or need, but in mutual respect, admiration, and deep emotional connection. I laughed freely, lived boldly, and experienced joy in ways I had never imagined. Every moment of my life was a testament to the journey I had undertaken. From the girl who had been betrayed to the woman who had risen, transformed, and reclaimed her power. And though they remained in my life only as distant memories, their existence served as a quiet reminder of how far I had come. Their regret, their longing, their disbelief. They were echoes of a past that no longer had power over me. I had taken heartbreak and turned it into fuel, betrayal into motivation, and despair into determination. I had become the woman I was, always meant to be, radiant, unstoppable, and fully in control of my own destiny. Every glance at the mirror, every compliment, every achievement was a celebration of my resilience. I had conquered the pain of betrayal not by seeking vengeance and cruelty, but by creating a life that radiated beauty, confidence, success, and love. I had risen above heartbreak, walked beyond the shadows of envy and betrayal, and embraced a life so full, so rich, and so vibrant that there was no room for regret, only for the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had claimed my power, my worth, and my happiness. In the end, I had learned the most profound lesson of all. The greatest revenge is living well, loving deeply, and shining brighter than anyone ever imagined. And as I moved forward into each new day, I carried with me the unwavering truth that I was untouchable, radiant, and loved for the woman I had always been meant to become.